Welcome to Launchpad, Rocket Fuel's interview series where we talk to prominent members of the Rocket Pool community or people working on projects related to Rocket Pool. Today we have a very special guest. You might know him as Darcius on Discord, but he's known to his friends and family as far as Dave, and he is the founder of Rocket Pool. So we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Dave's vision and founding Rocket Pool. So I'm really excited about this. I've been wanting to sit down and chat with you for a while, Dave. So thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Whack. Thank you for having me, mate. Again, yeah, we probably waited too long to do this, but better late than
Yeah.
never.
Yeah, no, it's great. Like, I think there's a lot of really exciting stuff happening now that we can talk about towards the end of the episode. But why don't we get started with like getting to know you a little bit? Like, let's go all the way back to like your childhood or high school or whatever. Like, what got you into technology, computers? How did that all start?
Oh well, I'm going to reveal my age a bit here. Um, so I got into computers. I was pretty much the black sheep of my family because all my cousins, everything else, they're in military trades, everything like that. I got into computer programming at like 9 years old. So we had an Apple IIe computer growing up. So I mean, we're going a ways back here. So this is a green and black screen computer that only ran off 5 and a quarter inch floppy disks. Didn't have any hard drive. You just plugged one of those in. And I got pretty obsessed with that, around kind of 6, 7 years old. As any young kid with technology kind of does. Um, anyway, for some reason, I was in a country school with like 100 kids, like a tiny country school, not big capital city or anything like that. And they just randomly had a book in that primary school for programming, the exact computer we had at home. Like, I still have no idea how it got in there. And I found it one day, took it home, and then, started tinkering, writing programs. And I think I started writing my first kind of real ones when I was around 9. And I'd get
Wow.
my friends to test them out when they came over. And this was, again, a extremely primitive kind of thing, computer. Um, so yeah, I did that for a while, and I still have that book to this day. I never returned it,
Amazing.
which is like, yeah,
the,
it's hidden
the,
away in my collection. I
the,
do need to actually dig it out and make sure it's still there because we moved recently. But yeah, and so that was kind of how it all began. Ever since then, yeah, pretty much just into programming a lot. When I was kind of around 17, 18, this thing we like to know as the internet kind of started to get really popular. And I had a computer science teacher. Well, so it wasn't a computer. I can't remember what it's called, but like it was in high school. It was year 11 or something like that. And it was a teacher which basically assigned me to do a website, to make a website. And this is back when it was HTML at its very earliest. Like, it was super primitive. And I can't even remember what the website was that I made. But anyway, I did that. And then I really liked the idea of websites. Like, it was really it was creative. It involved some programming as well as some design, because I love doing design stuff as well as programming. And it was kind of a good middle road for me. So I got into that. Um, did that, and that went well. It's a while ago now, so I can't really remember, but I think it did well. And yeah, that kind of got me interested into websites. Then fast forward a couple of years into university, um, I started getting more into developing websites because they were still quite. And I ended up making what was it? It was a search engine. This is maybe pre-Google, around the same time, probably around the same time, and it was like an aggregate search engine. It was called Stormbot. If anyone wants to go down and look it up, I don't even know if it's probably Internet Archive there somewhere. Anyway, it was like an aggregate search engine where it would go across all the current search engines, aggregate the results, and display them to you. So kind of like Dogpile. I don't know if you're familiar with Dogpile. It was very big back then.
yeah.
Anyway, it would do something similar. Terrible name. I think Stormbot was way better. But anyway, they did that. And yeah, and then I ended up doing, at the end of uni, for my computer science project, I think I ended up submitting Stormbot as my major computer science project. and got pretty much was it? I don't know what the top result was, but it was the top result. And then
Nice.
got employed by the university after that, after
Oh
I
wow,
graduated. So I started
that's
working in their
great.
IT department after that. So yeah, it's just been a non-stop roller coaster. I'm like a serial kind of. I like creating things. Like that's the easiest way
Hmm.
I can kind of describe it. And I'm good at programming, and I've
Yeah,
been pretty handy with design. Not as good as design as programming, but these two kind of allowed me to make things early on. As a solo project, I didn't need to hire a designer. I didn't need to hire a coder. I could kind of do both and get
yeah.
a feature-rich kind of workable product out the door. And so I've just been doing that pretty much my whole life. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, one of the things that you did after uni, this was early 2000s, was set up a business, right? Like, what was the business
Again,
that we
a
all know
website
about?
business.
Another website. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one's been talked about a bit in the Discord. So
Hmm.
I'm assuming this is Razor Prices, which is probably my
Raise the
first
prices, yeah.
real success. So
Hmm.
so this was like my first real success post, and I think I made this while I was working at the uni. Um, yeah, so I've made this in my spare time, and this was basically again, it was kind of like Stormbot where it would aggregate stuff. So it would go around to all the current. Okay, just take a step back. So Razor Prices was a place that you'd go to search for computer hardware, and it would show you the cheapest, basically, price that you're after for whatever hardware you're looking for. It was all categorized in video cards and stuff like that. So I'd written a crawler which would go around to all the main computer sites in Australia and scan their pages. You have to write a custom crawler kind of module for each site because they all had different HTML. This was before XML feeds and all that stuff, which had a nice unified layout that you could just go, all
Yeah.
right, plug one thing into and it brings you back everything. You had to kind of do a custom one for each one. So I did this back then, and that got all the computer prices, and it kind of managed to each module would scan the retailer's website, organize their computer hardware and prices into certain categories, and then kind of relay that back to the Razor Prices database. So that's what you do if you want a computer hardware back in very early 2000s.
Hmm.
In Australia, you'd go to Razor Prices. It kind of caught on. It did well. There's one or two other similar sites around at the same time that did that kind of thing, and it was much better than they were, and it caught on and did really well. Yeah, so that was my first kind of real success post
So
university.
the reason why we know about that is because of your interview in the Australian PC World, and like
Yeah,
when
I
you
was
search
so
for your
proud of
that's
that.
that's yeah.
Yeah,
How
I mean
was
that was
how was that as
yeah.
yeah.
No, that was crazy. So like that was just I was a kid, so I was basically just a kid at the time. So to get featured in and that was like the biggest computer magazine in Australia. So to get, I think it was even a half-page article. I can't, maybe it was a whole page. I can't remember, but yeah, that was a big kind of result, and I was over the moon. And I had a couple of smaller things here and there. I actually took out an ad in. I don't even know if it's still around, but I can't even remember the name of it. Anyway, it was basically a magazine that well, it was on the cusp of the internet becoming huge and old traditional magazines. So you'd have this magazine that would get sent around that had all. I think it was Trading Post. That's the name of it. Anyway, this was one in Australia called Trading Post, and they would have all the computer prices in there. And retailers would basically submit their catalogs to Trading Post, and it would publish them in a physical magazine that you had to go buy to look at the latest computer prices. So anyway, once I made Razor Prices that kind of did that, I then took out an ad in Trading Post, a full page ad. It cost me like $300 to take back at the time, and
Yeah.
advertised Razor Prices in their own magazine, which was kind of replicating what they were trying to do at the time. Um, yeah. Anyway, I haven't thought about that in 20 plus years. Whack. thanks for
Yeah,
thanks for digging up that one.
that's what we we
Yeah.
dig for those good stories. Like gotta really
Yeah.
dig back in
There you
archives.
go.
But when you say it was your first success, like tell me how was that as a feeling? Like what did that ignite in you, and has carried on since then?
Well, I just love creating stuff. So to actually create something that did really well, and then got publicised in Australia's biggest computer magazine, I was over the moon. So yeah, that's just on cloud nine for like 3 days when it happened. And yeah, it kept doing really well after that. I ended up what did I end up doing? I think I pretty much ended up phasing that out a couple of years later. There was a few competitors, and I was moving on to other things. And I think I sold it for a decent amount back then to some company. I have no idea what happens after then.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going ways back, like 20 years ago. That's crazy.
So did you then like get like a regular 9 to 5 job, or were you like kind of serial business starter slash website maker
I've
person?
always been a serial idea kind of creator guy. So I'd do my 9 to 5, and then I'd do these on the side. Just mostly because again I love creating stuff. Like I like it, whether it's programming or design, and the ability to combine both. I did that a lot from a young age, and I still do. Like I still do it to this day. Like it's crazy. So yeah, I ended up going more into, I think, my university job. Then I moved to Brisbane in Australia, so I was living in the country. Moved to Brisbane, and if you want to basically get increase your kind of paycheck anywhere as a young adult, and you want to kind of climb the corporate ladder, you've got to go to a capital city. And Australia's very big, so you kind of need to do that. And I did that, yeah, around my mid to late 20s, and yeah, I lived in Brisbane for quite a while after that. And then that's where I met another Rock Pool team member, which I can go into later on.
Yeah, we'll speak about that later. So let's skip forward a bit then. So you carried on working stuff. Like when did you first hear about crypto?
Yeah, okay, so I I heard about it early on, I heard about Bitcoin very early. Didn't get involved in it as early, but I heard about it shortly after it launched. I had a Reddit account. I still do. It's ancient at this point. It's got to be like 15 years old or something. But yeah, and I remember reading about it on Reddit. I think Bitcoin. I didn't pay too much attention to it at the time. Sounded like a bit of a novelty. The way it was kind of pitched at the time. But I got into it seriously. I got into crypto probably around October 2013. I got into it quite seriously around then. I Dogecoin kind of blew onto the scene, and there was a whole bunch of stuff on Reddit about it at the time. So that kind of made me pay a bit more attention, and I started kind of looking into Dogecoin, which led me to Bitcoin again. And I kind of looked into it a bit more now. Like I wasn't at first; it was just a passing glance, but now it was kind of. I should say the article that got it Dogecoin onto Reddit at the time was they sponsored a Jamaican bobsled team.
Bobsleigh teams.
Yeah, it was some crowdfunded out through Dogecoin, which was completely silly. And that they, yeah, and then they sponsored a race car
Race car.
after that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is internet history version, crypto version, with Dave. So we went back then. That made me kind of pay attention to Bitcoin. And then I just went full into it. Once I kind of just realized how it worked, yeah, I got super into it. I built my own Bitcoin mining rig, which is pictured on the first ever article I wrote about Rocket Pool in mid 2017. I included a photo of this rig. This was a custom rig. Again, like you can see, I love my computer hardware.
Yeah.
This is all bits and pieces which I build and play with. So yeah, I put together my first Bitcoin mining rig in late 2013. I think it had 6 video cards and 2 PSUs and some insane. And it drew so much power, like you have no idea. I had an electrician come around to check the circuits because we were living in a relatively old house, and I had an electrician come around and check the circuits. And we have one of these old school meters, like electricity meters out the front. These are for like the 1950s, where it basically just has something that spins to indicate how much electricity you're using at any one time. This thing was about coming off the hook. It was spinning so fast. This rig was pulling in that much juice. The guy was amazed. Like he'd never seen something like that before, and he was puzzled to how the circuits in the house were still actually functioning. So anyway, that was a short-lived endeavor because I did have Bitcoin mining and I did Dogecoin mining. Did a couple of coins back then. So did that, and it went well for a time, but Australia's electricity prices got absurdly expensive, so kind of dipped out of that. I can't even remember if it was a year or two. No, it would have been about a year and a half later. I think I finally unplugged that unit, but I had a lot of fun and I learned a ton using it in the meantime. So yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
Were you solo mining or were you part of like a mining group?
No, I was mining groups. Yeah, I was doing. So this is kind of the origins of Rocket Pool a little bit. So anyway, I was in a Bitcoin mining one back then. One like there's probably maybe 5 or 6 big pools back then. I can't remember which one it was, but I was in one of them. I was doing that same for Dogecoin and a couple other ones back then. But yeah, I love tinkering. Like yeah, so I tinker with this thing hours into the night. For our kids, obviously, because you can't afford to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd play around with this thing for hours and hours and hours, and yeah, and then my crypto thing just spiraled from there. Like yeah, it's still in it, obviously, to this day.
Did it like what did your family think about it when you started like doing all this stuff and building mining rigs and stuff? Did they like say, what on earth are you doing? What's this crypto thing? How are those conversations?
Yeah, so okay, let's start off with the wife, then girlfriend. I mean, she was the girlfriend then. Actually, I think we might have been engaged at this point. No, we weren't. We weren't engaged at this point. She was very supportive. Like I would tell her about this stuff, and I would basically go home and I would throw like this is very financially irresponsible. Do not do this at home, kids, if you're listening. But every paycheck I had, I would throw pretty much all my spare cash into whatever crypto I was at the time. So if it was Bitcoin, and then Ethereum came along, I'd basically put as much, aside from bill, I wouldn't spend bill money or anything like that. I would dedicate whatever, expendable cash I had to basically buy either Bitcoin or Ethereum at the time. And I talked to her about this, and I said, we'll buy this much every month, and then we'll put it away. And she was okay with it, which is insane.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you probably have to her to thank just as much as me for the creation of Rocket Pool, because it takes a lot in a partner to go, thumbs up to some technology which is brand new, and you got Dogecoin sponsoring Jamaican lettuce and all other crazy stuff like that, and go, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So yeah, did that at the time, and then had my dad still doesn't know what Rocket Pool does. He's old school. I gave up trying to explain that about 6 years ago. Now we just said that it's basically a magic internet protocol that does cool things, and he's okay with that, and I'm okay with that. Because if I haven't explained it at this point, it's not going to get explained. So we have a mutual agreement where, are things going good? I'll be like, yep. And he's like, all right, cool. And that's pretty much the depth of that.
And what communities were you part of at this time? Like, who were you talking to about crypto, and like all these where were you learning about it?
I mean, Reddit was a big part of it back then. Reddit was nowhere near as big as it is now, and you could find a lot of that stuff early on. Was never really a big Twitter guy. I mean, I've never really been a huge Twitter guy, but Twitter was a big component of it back then, and I would look at it occasionally. But yeah, I mean, Discord didn't exist back then. I mean, the first Rocket Pool like kind of comms room that was ever open was on Slack. And Slack was a big thing, so you could go into a few Slacks back then. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty limited, to be honest, compared to today. I mean, crypto journalism wasn't really a thing back then, so there wasn't. I mean, there might have been one or two kind of notable websites, but I can't remember what they were back then, if they were. So I'd say Reddit for the most part. Yeah.
So when Vitalik released the white paper, like, did you read the white paper as it came out, or was it something that you caught up with later? Like, how soon into Ethereum's history did you get into Ethereum?
Okay, so I didn't buy in or anything until a bit after the original ICO from Ethereum. I mean, much to everyone's regret, where's my time machine, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I did. I was aware of Ethereum well before they launched. There was another colored coin one on Bitcoin. I can't remember the name of it.
I forgot the name too.
Yeah,
That's okay.
So they were
the colored
they
coin.
were,
I remember that.
Yeah, they were big back then. They were having a bit of a stash with the Ethereum developers before Ethereum was released, saying, we can do this on Bitcoin using colored coins and whatnot. That so I was aware of it through that kind of communication because I was very much focused on Bitcoin at that time. And I did get into Bitcoin. I mean, I did get into Ethereum. Sorry, pretty soon. Like I looked into it before it launched. I looked into it after it launched. Pretty soon after it launched. And kind of got really, really enthralled with the idea of smart contracts. Being a developer myself and being hugely into crypto, that was, I was like, I can program stuff to run on blockchain now. Like, whereas with Bitcoin, it was like, here, I'll send you something, you send it to me back, and that was it. Kind of, it was great. But being able to actually program trustless stuff on a blockchain was obviously unheard of at the time. So yeah, that was a really big draw card. It kind of got me hooked into Ethereum pretty early on after it launched, actually.
So one of the things that you do is you program in Solidity, right? So like, how quickly after Ethereum's launch did you like learn Solidity, and what were some of the first smart contracts you kind of played around with?
Yeah, pretty early. I can't remember the version number of Solidity that I was working on. So I do have one of the files still here. I wrote ethpool.sol, which is the very first version of kind of rock. Like, we're talking just tinkering around with the idea, and it's got the Solidity version in it at the time. I'll have to dig it up, but it's super early. So the tooling was virtually non-existent at the time. You just basically
Yeah.
just had to kind of figure things out as you went because it was so new. Like, it was. I mean, kudos to the Ethereum Foundation and everyone else at the time for kind of establishing really good Solidity docs. I mean, at the time, it was still quite rudimentary, but I mean, the getting anything good software off the ground is documentation is 90% of the key, and they did a really good job early on of that. From memory, I mean, if I look back now, it could be a little bit of a case of me being, rose-colored glasses looking back on old times.
Yeah.
But from memory, it was quite good. So, but yeah, it was still super early. Like, way early, like before the original DAO hack, and that
Wow.
they had stuff. Yeah, and yeah. Anyway, I was investor in the original DAO too. So
Oh wow. Yeah.
I actually watched it when it went down. I noticed one of the first transactions. Where so anyway, that's another history lesson. We'll be here for 6 hours if I keep talking about this stuff. So
No, that's
I'll let
cool.
you take
Tell us.
control. Right?
That's really interesting. How was that? Like, what was going on that day?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, two of the biggest notable things I can remember coming out on Ethereum straight after it kind of got off the ground was Augur, which was a crowd market prediction platform. I got in on the pre-sale of that, and it went terrible. If I kept that money in ETH, it would have done so much better. But anyway, I love the idea, and I think it would have done incredibly well. Maybe in a not timeline, but wasn't to be for our one. But yeah, I got involved in the original kind of DAO because I mean, when did this happen? It was
2015,
2006, 2015, was
16,
it? Yeah, I'm
either
thinking.
early 16, I think, end of 15,
I,
16.
yeah, I was thinking mid 16, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I got into that. So the ability to have a DAO which could fund various projects. It could spawn new projects that anyone could fund in. And that was massive at the time. Like, that was huge. And that they got an insane amount of ETH sent to them at the time.
That's right.
And so, yeah. But of course, everyone knows kind of how that played out. There was an issue discovered, and someone drained pretty much most of the funds
Hmm.
using this kind of re-entry attack at the time. Re-entry, I mean, they were aware of this issue and they didn't patch it. I don't know if they had the ability to patch it at the time. I can't remember how it worked, but they didn't have the ability to patch it, or they chose not to. I can't remember. But anyway, so an attacker kind of used this re-entry attack, which was the ability to replace a variable with another transaction before the original transaction had finished, kind of set up. And this allowed them to drain funds. And I was at work. I was just about to leave. I think it was I can't remember if it was a Friday night. I think it might have been. It was, and I was looking at one of the things at time showed you how much ETH was in a certain contract or something like that. You could just suddenly see it start going down. No one's read it, and someone else had noticed this on Reddit at the same time. So I went home that afternoon, and more people started commenting, what's going on. And I think I had my DAO tokens, and I sold them at the time. I can't remember the exact details, but I sold a few that day, and then more the next day because I always like to hedge my bets. And I think I got most of my funds back from that incident. A lot of people didn't, unfortunately, and that spawned then, the new network, Ethereum Classic, which is a whole other saga in Ethereum's timeline. Anyway, I won't go into it. So we'll try and keep on track a little bit.
Yeah. So, what was it like in those early Ethereum days? Did you feel like you were in like out on the frontier and just discovering some brand new amazing thing that like the?
Okay, sorry, to press a little bit for you.
Yeah, sorry, I was saying, what was it like in those early days? Like, did you feel like you were out on like the frontiers and everything was this brand new thing, or was it just more of like you just kind of went along with it, or did you know that it was going to be such a big thing? Like, how did you approach it back then?
Yeah, I always believed. I've been pretty. I wouldn't never classify myself as a maximalist, but I was strongly opinionated that Ethereum had a lot better qualities going for it than pretty much all the other cryptocurrencies around at the time, like including Bitcoin. I still like Bitcoin, but I think being a programmer at heart, the ability to write smart contracts for me was an absolute draw card and a game changer on a broader level that it would allow much more use cases, which is already apparent. I mean, DeFi wasn't a thing at the time, and it absolutely, the amount of stuff you can do in DeFi compared to just Bitcoin still, it just was an absolute game changer for me. So I wouldn't declare myself as a maximalist, more a pragmatic enthusiast. I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so was it around this kind of time then the idea for Rocket Pool started coming to you? Like, how was that happening at the same time?
Yeah. Okay. So, kind of tying into Bitcoin again, I was at the time around 2015. There was a lot of conjecture around, all the Bitcoin farms, Bitcoin pools. I think there's maybe 5 of them. But if anyone wanted to perform an attack on Bitcoin at the time, they maybe had to make 3 phone calls. And so there was a lot of discussion around that, about how bad that was, how centralized Bitcoin had become and whatnot. And then tying again into the fact that I just discovered smart contracts that can enable a trustlessness on a decentralized network that could kind of mitigate that to some degree, if not entirely. I was like, oh, hang on, that sounds like a good idea. So I basically just started diving into it. I used that as an excuse to learn Solidity. That was my primary excuse. I'd been tinkering in Solidity up until that point, but actually learning the ins and outs and the nuances of it. And again, the documentation was kind of good, but I wouldn't say it was great. Was really interesting. So I just basically dove into it at that point and went, can you make a decentralized mining pool? Like, is it possible now that we have these smart contract things? And then turns out it was.
Yeah. So the proof of stake at that time was just a figment in Vitalik's imagination, pretty much. Like, how was it for you to start thinking about that happening? Like, what thoughts were going through your mind at that point?
Yeah, so it was on their roadmap,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, staking wasn't a new thing at the time. Staking was done in other protocols. There's a really well-known one that escapes my mind right now, but it's well and truly gone at the moment. But staking back then was very kind of centralized. They used these things called checkpoints and things like that, and it was happening on a few other protocols. But on Ethereum's roadmap was the idea of staking in a truly decentralized way, and that kind of caught my attention. And so to kind of get Rocket Pool, kind of the early days, like an alpha version of it written. I didn't know how it was going to be done on Ethereum at that time until Vitalik released something called the Move paper. So the Move paper was one of the first papers released that kind of spec'd out actual functions the parameters that they would receive and things like that in an actual paper. So I then wrote my own dummy version of staking on Ethereum using it like a dumb contract that would mimic the way the Ethereum one was kind of planned to be. And this allowed me to write rock pool and then stake them on my dummy contract and earn rewards. And back then, staking was originally intended to be done through a smart contract. The fancy beacon chain that we have now came after much deliberation about how congested staking. Back then Ethereum was already kind of getting a little congested, and if you had everyone sending attestations every 15 seconds or whatever to a smart contract, I mean, it was nuts. So the original intent was good, but the execution wasn't going to work through this smart contract. And then we ended up getting the beacon chain, like 2 years later, after everyone kind of agreed that was not a great idea. But that original paper, the mode paper that had those original specifications in it, Metallica release, allowed me to write, this version of Rockpool, which was an alpha version. And let me do some more name dropping while we're at it. I actually met Vitalik about a year later, after I'd kind of gotten talking to Consensus about this idea of Rockpool. And I met him in San Francisco. I flew to San Francisco, met him and Carl. Carl was another lead researcher at the time. Carl Florence? Can't remember his surnames, but he's very well known and an excellent presenter. Dude was insanely good at presenting. But anyway, I met those two. We kind of discussed this very early version of Rockpool and how it would kind of play out. And then they scrapped staking through a smart contract after that, and we had to kind of retool stuff. But luckily, a lot of the core concepts of Rockpool, even back then, like we had the idea of mini pools back then, the nodes that would manage them. A lot of the core concepts still carried over from staking through a smart contract and staking through the beacon chain. Just, you're dealing with one chain and then you're dealing with two chains, which carried extra kind of baggage with it. But yeah.
Okay, let's take a little bit of an aside here. So, when you were like in your crypto journey, did you meet people in real life along those early days? Like, how did that happen? Did you make friends through crypto?
Oh, whack. This is a segue. I swear you had this segue written beforehand because it goes perfectly into the next segment. Anyway, I didn't. I did to some degree. There was Ethereum meetups in Brisbane, and I went to a bunch of those because I was very much into it. And I remember going to... I went to one in Brisbane one Friday night. It's got training randomly, and it was just a group of people, and it was awesome. Everyone was totally chill. But anyway, I kept going to them until I went to there was another official Brisbane meetup where I presented, where they asked me to present Rocket Pool, and I did this in a crowded room, maybe 30 people at the back of some thing, I don't know. Anyway, it's the first time I'd actually done a slide presentation to kind of present the concepts of rock pool, mini pools, staking, all that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of really good questions. It was still very new. Most people weren't really aware of what staking was, but it went really well. So I kept going back to more of these meetups. And then I went to another meetup and I met someone named Langans. And so Langans and I kind of got to talking because he was into it as well. And he was quite keen to learn about Rocket Pool. And I was like, well, all right, I'll explain it to you, which was what I was doing 99% of the time to everyone I met. So that went well, obviously. And we stayed in touch and we kept catching up at other meetups. And then we had kind of Rocket Pool kind of started getting some traction. I was like, it's a one-man band at this point. I kind of need to bring some other people on. And he was a coder and he learnt Solidity, so he joined myself along with Jake, who was another good friend that was on the very much. I couldn't have done half without Jake. Like, he was very helpful early days. I brought him on. I worked with him beforehand, and then I basically employed him. So I took him away for his job and got him to work with us full time. So then that was the three of us working on it from about 2008, about January, March 2018 to maybe 2020, 2021-ish. So yeah, we worked on it quite a bit during that time. It was just the three of us. So yeah.
How was it like that bull market in 2017 where ETH, just went beyond everyone's wildest dreams and hit $1,400? Like how was that time in for you and also for Rocket Pool? Like your ideas about it at the time?
Yeah, so we did our original kind of token sale around September 2017. So that was it. It was absolute ICO hype at the time. Like it was crazy.
Mm.
That was part of the reason why the bull market got so much momentum. There's all these projects coming out, and Rocketpool did one of the lowest token sales of the time. I mean, it was almost criminal how little we kind of raised it. But that was a goal at the time. Like I didn't want to do a huge raise. I just wanted to do something managed that we could actually work on the product with and deliver something back to the people who invested in the token at the time. That other ones, you have other ones like Golem and a few of the other big names from back then that just raised hundreds of thousands of ETH. Like it
Oh
was
no,
it was
EOS
insane.
raised 4 billion.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
know that's
there was a lot of money being
yeah.
raised back then.
So we
Yeah,
were actually one of the tiniest at the time, and that bull market was insane. Like that was hype. Like that was pure hype. Um, and so I mean, I struggle to think of now. Maybe a handful of projects that are still around from that era today. I mean, Rockpool is
yeah,
probably one of the. Oh, I mean, it's an OG project now, but the fact that we had the smallest raise possible back then, and still outcompeted a lot of these ones that raised absolute billions of dollars, like just
yeah.
insane amounts, even hundreds of millions. And we had one of the lowest ones possible at the time, and we're still around and kicking today. So anyway,
Yes,
that I
really
digress
great.
from that. That's yeah, I digress. So anyway, that the bull market was really fun, and a lot of people don't realize before that bull market was the altcoin kind of bull market that happened before that one. There was about 3-4 years prior was the everyone making clones of Bitcoin,
Yeah,
and basically, yeah, I've made a new coin which they just copied their code. I mean, Litecoin,
yeah,
just copied their code base and changed a few parameters and called it a day. And that was like everyone creating these clones of Bitcoin back then, and that was a huge thing. So first you have the altcoin bull market, then you had the ICO one, and then the one after that was kind of like a DeFi,
NFT, DeFi.
NFT.
Yeah,
So I mean, the 2015 one's semi DeFi. Well, not really. I'd say the one after that was more
Maker
DeFi
Maker came
NFT.
after, right? Maker was
One.
2018. Yeah, but
Yeah,
so then the market went to crap. There was you, Langers, and Jake. Like, how was that period? Like in 2018, 2019, like those depths of the bear
yeah.
market.
Pretty stressful. Not going to be honest. I'm not going to lie. Like because I was managing the project. Like I said, we did a really really small raise, and that was during the peak of the bull market. So it crashed, and I had to manage like the tax that resulted from that as well. So when you do a sale, that's a sale at the time, and
Hmm.
so I had to manage the kind of tax bill from 2018 to 2019, which was through a bear market. And I tell you what, I'm just blessed that I have a very dedicated wife as well, because that was stressful, like managing that. And then I always kind of expected another bull market and always hope for it. So I kind of planned accordingly, the way we would manage kind of wages and tax, and having such a small sale that then got incredibly smaller after the crash, because suddenly you have this asset and then it's just absolutely dropped in value, and it hit
Yeah.
double digits. I think it was in late 2018. Like it really crashed, and then we had COVID after that. So the fact that we kept developing, kept producing, kept releasing betas during all that, like I think it's a credit to the guys. Like it's a massive credit to the guys that we still got through that. We still managed to rally a community, still managed to manage all the day-to-day stuff like tax bills, wages, doing all that stuff through an absolute bear market. And no one even thinks about that anymore. But that was probably the most stressful time, just because all the factors involved. I mean, I pulled both these guys away from their jobs to work with me. I didn't want to
Yeah.
let them down, so yeah, it's a lot of work.
Was there ever a moment where you thought that you wouldn't be able to carry on and like that you'd have to call it quits?
Nah, I'm really stubborn. Like that's just me.
Yeah.
And I'm annoyingly optimistic, which is a thing. So you ever have that one person that just is really optimistic about pretty much everything, and it gets super annoying after a while. Well, that's pretty much me. So I always pictured there'd be, another bull market, there'd be a way to carry on. Just keep plugging away, and stuff will happen. It's you get the most work done during bear markets, as bad as it sounds, because everyone's just focused on the price when it's going up, and everyone's having a great time. But you get a lot of work done when that's not happening, because you can focus on the work at that point. And
of course.
But,
okay, this question just popped into my mind. I should have asked it earlier. Do you ever regret choosing the name Rocket Pool, or are you like super proud of it still? Like, how did the name of
I love it. I mean, for context, the first idea was to call it Outback Steakhouse, which is terrible, and puns don't market well. And so going from Outback Steakhouse, spelled obviously Stake, to Rocket Pool, Rocket Pool was just leagues above that. So Rocket Pool sounds cool. So yeah, here we are.
Awesome, that's great. Okay, so let's get up to like you said that early Rocket Pool talk happened on Slack. Like, how did those early communities form? Like, how did you nurture those? How were you a part of those?
Well, they usually form by so the first kind of signals for Rocket Pool was put out an article I wrote and published to Reddit. And then we kind of created the Slack after that. And we had curious people kind of popping in. Then we did a token sale, and that drew in more people, because obviously anyone, investors and stuff, all want to find out what this thing is, so they'll join the first communication channels for the project. So we had a lot then. It was pretty much just me running the Slack back then. So I'd be in there a lot, and then trying to code as well. A little distracting, but I still loved it. I loved getting in the early days, because people were genuinely curious about staking and Ethereum. Like, most people didn't even have any idea about Ethereum. They'd just find a project at the time and then just kind of go, oh yeah, they're doing a token sale. Let's find out more about them. I'll go ask the founder. So they would just jump in and ask without doing any research. I mean, it hasn't probably changed that much, to be honest, but this happened a lot. And so then I would answer everyone's questions. Like, I'd spent hours in there answering, and I think that's kind of was the origins of kind of our community. I've just spent inordinate amounts of time talking to people, and yeah, so I did that while kind of. And I would, again, being annoyingly optimistic probably helped in that regard, because I'd be like, well, maybe they just didn't find out about it. And then I would spend hours explaining it to them. And yeah, rinse and repeat about 3,000 times.
So when did you go from the Slack channels to an actual like Discord community? How did that happen?
Oh, Slack sucked. Like, to be honest, like it was terrible. I didn't like the way they did half this stuff. And so as soon as something more viable kind of appeared, we just jumped ship to that. And Discord, even the early version of Discord, was just leagues better than Slack at the time. So, it didn't take much to ditch Slack, because again, it kind of sucks. Yeah.
So, do you think the community was mostly just like people popping in and asking questions, or were there people sticking around and like actually like starting to talk?
A bit of both. Like, yeah, we definitely had a few. Like, there's a few OGs that I still keep in contact with from the very early days. I know a bunch of them that joined the Slack. They moved to Discord, and I still know these guys. I've met a few of them at Denver last year, and hopefully I'll meet them again at the next one. But yeah, like true OGs, and that they hung around. So you had those elements of people who kind of came in, asked a few questions, and kind of enjoyed their time there, and then spent more time there. And then you'd have people that just came in and asked questions, and then you'd never hear from them again. And that's just the way it goes. I mean, you don't know who's going to stick around. You don't know who's going to leave. So you may as well just answer everyone's questions politely and hope a good community kind of forms around it.
How did Patricio get involved in Rocket Pool in those early days? Because I know that he was around was he ICO buyer, or was he just someone who bought really early?
So my long-term theory of this is he's a time traveler. So, because he just rocked up out of nowhere one day and just came in he was in our Slack. So that's how OG he was, because our Slack didn't last long. And I don't know if he'd done his research on staking on Ethereum. Like 99% of people who came in still didn't know what staking was, let alone the details like that. But yeah, he came in and he DM'd me, and we just got to talking originally, and this is before the token sale, and then yeah, we had a number of chats, and I guess it went well because then he just went hard into way more than anyone else in the token sale at the time, and
Yeah.
jumped back in his time machine and went back to the future. I think after that, so I don't know. It was just such opportunistic timing, and just the way it all unfolded was just really kind of uncanny valley kind of stuff. But yeah. Anyway,
That's cool. And did he then stay around in the community, or was he just kind of like a peripheral figure most of the time?
kind of peripheral. Yeah, I wouldn't say he was actively involved in the community. Yeah, very much. I mean, he had a lot of stuff going on. So yeah, he had his fingers in a few pies at the time. I'm guessing. So yeah, definitely more peripheral.
And then POAP, of course, started, and that's he's Mr. POAP now, so that's cool. Okay, interesting, because of course, most people think of Rocket Pool, and one of the first things they think is like, oh, who's this guy Patricio who's got such a big amount of RPL token, and for a while that was. When I first heard about Rocket Pool, one of the first things I knew was that there was this guy Patricio who had a third of the tokens, or it wasn't that much, I know, but a big chunk of tokens. And was that ever a cloud that hung over you guys, or was that just hey, it's Patricio, let's just go with it?
No, I always viewed that as fair game. I mean, the dude, it could have gone the other way for him. He could have gone all in, and it could have turned to nothing. So, I mean, you take a big risk, you get big rewards. It's fair game as far as I'm concerned. There was no insider knowledge, nothing like that. He did his due diligence and came out on top. So, kudos to him.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a great guy. I met him in Denver, and he's extremely friendly and such a warm person. And of course, I love POAP, so that's cool. But
who doesn't love a POAP?
Do you remember when trading started?
Yeah, it was originally another name. I think no. So originally, I wanted okay. So when you have these communities and you start this kind of thing, everyone wants to talk about basically price. Yeah. So I was like, where can we put all these people that just want to talk about token price for the not tech? So I created a channel and put it to the very bottom of the Discord, and it became the most popular one. So who knows? But I mean, it's just human nature. Everyone loves chatting about prices, making money, all that kind of stuff. So it was obviously it was extremely important channel. But yeah, chatting about the tech, not nearly as exciting about number go up, which a lot of people like to talk about. So yeah.
It's really ironic now because we have this joke in trading where trading is a channel where you talk about everything except trading. That's just what it's become now, where it's just a free for all about all these other things. One of the things that the Rocket Pool protocol is kind of known for is the light touch on the moderation on the Discord, and how a lot of the times yeah. Sorry, I was saying. Yeah, I was saying one of the things that people have this idea of Rocket Pool, the community, is there's a light touch with the moderation, and a lot of times, conversation can go any which way that it goes. Was that a deliberate choice from the beginning, or was that just how the community kind of developed?
No, it was pretty deliberate from the beginning. I've been involved in a lot of communities at the point, and one thing that would ruin it very quickly is heavy moderation to the point where you kind of want to instill your will on the community through moderation, and that happens a lot. I mean, it is tempting. I'm not gonna lie. There's sometimes where you're like, oh, come on. But I would never do that, and I made sure from early on that we kept the light touch and moderation, just kind of let free talk happen. And it's not without its drawbacks. You do have to. It does give scammers more opportunity occasionally to kind of do that, but thankfully that's where also Cron comes in. Cron has been a valuable tool for our Discord. That dude is just insane. Just an absolute machine at moderation. And he's been managed a lot of our current community kind of conversations. Credit goes fully to Cron just for the way he's managed things. We talked early on. Cron and I did quite a bit. We haven't talked as much lately, but we chatted a lot early on, and he's just an absolute machine at effective moderation. It's an art form, it really is. And you can burn people, and then some people won't come away in there, even though you're just trying to do the right thing through moderation. And he's just found a really good kind of line to do it. and I'm just constantly impressed.
Yeah, and do you? I guess I won't ask too many questions about Kron because Kron's like this great mystery figure, and it's best to just leave it at that. I think so. Let's leave it there. So, tell me about some of the betas that were happening into, the as before the beacon chain launched and after the beacon chain. Like, Rocket Pool famously didn't launch with the beacon chain launch, and it launched pretty much a year later. Like, how was that time where you knew that? Other services were coming online, or people were starting to stake, and Rocket Pool wasn't ready. Like, was that a tough time
I
for you?
mean,
Like,
we had a beta on the existing version. Okay, so like I touched on earlier, like staking through a smart contract was the original vision for Ethereum. We had a beta on that. We were the only one that actually used the staking version of the contract, which I compiled at the time, and we used that for the beta. So we were with it. I mean, I don't know where you get a. Can we get a pulp for that? I don't know, but we did that back then. And then obviously we swapped to the beacon chain, which is whole other beast. It's not just compiling a smart contract to plug into a beta. Suddenly you have two chains. How do you simulate another chain? So we wrote our own version of the beacon chain. Not many people know this. So we had a Node.js script we deployed to a server that would mimic receiving attestations, giving awards, that kind of thing at the time, well before the beacon chain was even launched. So we managed to have a beta, several betas using that kind of script set up. So it was entirely centralized staking, but it was only for beta. It was only to mimic how the current kind of development on Ethereum was progressing, because they would change the spec all the time, so we'd have to update the script and make it react accordingly. But that's how we kind of managed betas back then. We would just DIY it pretty much, and make it true to the spec as we could. And then they would change it, and then we'd have to update it, and they change it, and we'd have to update it. So yeah, we did that for a couple of years. And again, we've had songs written about the betas, how many betas we've had. So we had no shows of test. All for testing. Like, that's one thing, security testing above all else. So we made sure, with day one for Rockpool rolled around, that it had been tested as much as possible. And so yeah, that's one thing we do kind of hold ourselves a lot to, is making sure we test our stuff as thoroughly as possible. Yeah.
That's great. And yeah, so then, the beacon chain launched and Rocket Pool wasn't ready. So how was that as an experience for you of
Well,
knowing
technically,
that, you
it wasn't us. We had to wait for withdrawal, smart contract
you'd
withdrawal.
worked so long for this,
we
and
could have
then
launched. We could have launched at most. I mean, I've got a ton of pressure for this. Like, we faced a ton of people just coming in going, "Why is Rockpool not live? Why is Rockpool not live?" So we launched about a year after staking on Ethereum did, just because smart contract withdrawals weren't basically in the spec at that time, and we were a large part of kind of helping push that forward, because we were pinging Danny all the time about it, asking him questions. So Danny's pretty much the lead researcher for driving development on Ethereum, and we talked to him quite a bit at the time, and we kind of wanted this to happen, and it seemed like a natural fit. I mean, staking decentralized network, why can't you make withdrawals decentralized? So anyway, so we pushed for that, and we got copped a lot of crap that year, just because we'd been in beta for so long. Why aren't you guys launching? And because we didn't want to launch with basically a half-assed product. I mean, our goal from day one was to be a decentralized staking protocol, not a semi-decentralized staking protocol, where we're a custodian for a year, and then we do a flip switch to another model, which is being decentralized and whatnot. So I actually talked to several custodians during that year. So custodian is basically someone who will hold, take the asset. Will be the withdrawal mechanism for the asset, because if you can't do it decentralized, you need to trust someone to kind of hold those assets. So I talked to a variety of them about how we could maybe set it up through different providers throughout the world, different custodians throughout the world. You might have like 7 to 10 different custodians. Turned out to be Lido's model. So yeah, anyway, that was and I did actually chat to a lot of guys before they even launched. That's a whole other talk. So that's yeah, that was interesting at the time. But man, yeah, we had a lot of pressure, but I do not regret it at all. Again, I can be really stubborn when I want to be. Not just with optimism. Like I was dead set on making sure this was going to be decentralized when we launched, because it's so much harder to move, like to change something when, like, so to manage custodianship for 1 year and then pivot to a decentralized model would have involved an absolute ton of trust in our first year. Then we would have been getting tons of stuff like, why aren't you doing this decentralized? I thought you guys wanted to be decentralized. And it just would have been a terrible, terrible look. So we just have made the absolute call, do it decentralized or nothing. And we went with that. Yeah.
And of course, like I guess now that you have no regrets about that, right? Because it looks like it was the right course of action, which is great. How was that the false launch? So Rocket Pool's ready for launch, and then you get a critical bug like the day before launch is due to happen. How was that like as an experience?
Yeah, like honestly, it was a little heartbreaking at time. But we had I had people DMing me from like the original 2017. People I hadn't heard from in years, just give me a pat on the back. Like it was amazing. So it was horribly disappointing at the time. But part of that community outreach then to support us, like we basically just said, we're not going to launch. Like this sucks for everyone. It's one of the things. But there's no way we're going to jam in a fix quickly just to save a little bit of face and launch as soon as we can. So we took everything back to the drawing board with that fix, figured out a good fix for it, rewrote the smart node software, redid the contracts, got them re-audited, and it took a little bit longer, but there's no way I would have tried to jam. Like it was horribly disappointing, but there's no way I would try to jam through a quick fix, just save a little
Yeah.
face or make myself feel a bit better. Yeah, safety and security first and foremost every time.
Absolutely. And then actually got the actual launch. So how was that for you to see something that you'd worked on for like 4 years at that point actually coming on chain and being live for everyone in the world and getting like so much excitement as well? Like how's that?
Yeah, I mean that was amazing. Like, and again, like we had a hugely supportive community, and we still do. Like, it's just been absolutely amazing to get that kind of support. A lot of people don't even realize the kind of we had tremendous pressure to get this thing delivered, and to have it delivered and then it actually work the way you intended. It's every developer's dream. I mean, especially,
Yeah.
and then when you're talking a protocol that has the kind of value locked in at rock pool, yeah, it was an absolute weight off my shoulders to get off. But I'm not saying it wasn't going. I did take even more risks up to that point because I had to launch the first mini pool with the first version of contracts, and I used that my own ETH for that. And if that didn't take, or there was an issue with that, before we opened it up to the public, we would have had to deploy the contracts again, and I would have lost
Yeah.
my ETH. So, I mean, there's case to say putting money where your mouth is. I put my money where my mouth was on that launch, and that original validator is still running today.
Hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's really cool. And how was it with the RPL price at that point? Like token hit $60 basically right around launch time. Was that any like how did you feel about that? Or did you have any feelings at all about that? Or was that not something you were caring
Oh,
about?
like I've been through a lot of bear markets and a lot of bull markets. I think I'm a little bit dead inside when it comes to token prices and ETH prices. Not that
Yeah.
that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just that I've gotten so used to volatility. I mean, if you came from a trade buy kind of like job and you went into crypto, it would destroy you emotionally if you weren't prepared for what you're into. But if you've been in the
Yeah.
market for many years and you can kind of gauge this ups and downs, if you see it going up in a parabolic fashion, you pretty much guaranteed it's going to come down to a certain degree. Just how far is usually the question. So
Yeah.
you have to prepare yourself for that. I mean, it was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. It's everyone's like it's party and Discord time. Everyone's going crazy. Like that's probably the funnest part is watching everyone's reactions because everyone gets so caught up in the euphoric kind of behavior. It's amazing to watch that. That's probably the funnest part, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you've been through a few of these cycles, you generally know the way it'll play out when it goes up so fast. So you tend not to get too swept up in the mania. Well, at
That
least to
makes
some
sense.
degree. Yeah.
So around that time and the time after that, you stopped being as present in the Discord. Like, what was the reasoning for that? And was that like a deliberate thing, or is it just something that happened with time?
It kind of just happened with time. A lot of it too was, I mean, I have poured so much time into Rockpool. Like, it's insane the amount of time I've poured into Rockpool. So just kind of drawing back from the day to day community management stuff. Wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened over time because my life got busier. Like, I've got 3 kids now. I've got a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. They didn't exist when Rocketball launched. So it was, yeah, obviously life, as they say, gets in the way, and there's a large part of that. I mean, I love them bits. I spend tons of time with them. We do, I teach them about computers and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
just life gets in the way a bit to a large degree. Also, the team's gotten bigger, the protocol's got bigger. I have other obligations now where I need to manage kind of high level stuff. I haven't touched code in probably 2 years. So being as the one, which is funnily enough, we just had an audit recently, and they pulled up. One of the things they pulled up was a comment that was written by me a couple of years ago. It said it was like a really mundane comment, should be in the code. It's been in there for like forever. But anyway, so yeah, I haven't touched code in ages. So now I've managed more of the high level stuff. Strategy, a lot of the communications with other stakeholders, all the boring stuff a coder generally would hate to do, but I don't mind doing it, and I've been doing it now for a while, where it's kind of become second nature. So I'll do that, and yeah, we've got kind of like managing team stuff as well, and then we have managing conferences, we have managing audits, managing or help working with community. There's a lot of facets, and yeah, so I do a lot of the high level stuff where I don't have as much time to spend in Discord as well. Between that and family, it's hard to find hours to spend Discord every day like I used to. I used to spend all my time in there. So yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, not as much anymore. But I still read a lot. So just FYI, everyone out there, Dave reads a lot.
And then when, like, now you said, your job's kind of changed now. So one of the things that you're working on is conferences. So last month you guys went to Istanbul. How was that as an experience for the team going out there and kind of representing Rocket Pool DevConnect?
Well, this is probably a better one for Linus to answer because I organised for the guys to go. We only set a contingent over there this time just because we have audits that were just about to start pretty much when they got back. So
Yeah.
I had to stay on deck to kind of manage all the pre-audit stuff, which is organising a whole bunch of things. And so, yeah, those guys went. It went really well. I mean, it was awesome staking summit. I mean, they met pretty much a lot of the regulars over there, like Ken and so forth. It went well. Nick and I stayed in Australia, and we went to an Australian cryptocurrency conference, which I've never been to one in Australia before, but it was just down in Melbourne. So it was a quick flight to get down there for a couple of nights and then back again. And that was good. That was interesting. I don't think they're at the world stage level just yet, but it was fun. And it was good to meet other Australian crypto guys. So yeah, there's a lot of those getting around, and we got a lot of recognition down there. And a lot of people in Australian crypto don't know Rockpool's an Australian project, at least, and know G1. And so yeah, a lot of people are kind of surprised to find out that. But yeah, as far as Istanbul went though, very successful. I heard there was an amazing boat ride, which I'm jealous that I missed out on. But we'll all be at Denver, so yeah, hopefully we can organise something pretty amazing for that one too.
So you just mentioned that Nick was one of the people who stayed back as well, because he, of course, was working on the new version of the Rocket Pool website. So the who was involved in making the old website? Was that something you made, or was that something you guys outsourced?
Yeah, that was designed and built all by me originally. Same with the one before that. Same with the one before that. Although Nick did a lot of development for the last one. Yeah, he touched up a lot of my stuff, replaced it. Probably some of my terrible comments in there too. Yeah, so I did all the graphic design, everything for Rockpool up to this date. Now we get Sleety to help out with a lot of that stuff now. He's far better designer than I am, and I don't have as much time anymore. So, and it's not like I need to be a one-man band doing all that stuff. So, yeah, Nick did an amazing job on the website. I've known Nick for many years now as well. And he was one of the, I think he was working at the same job I was as a senior developer. When I kind of got into Bitcoin originally back then. So and I've known him to be an amazing developer. Like the dude, you can give him anything and he'll nail it. So he did an awesome job building a new website, and he's got a few other things that he's kind of tinkering on at the moment.
That's so great. So what, like the orange, of course, like everyone, that's kind of become, like literally I've got the orange microphone cover now because of the orange, right? Like the old website was just so orange. I think the question everyone wants to know is, when do we get orange mode for the new website? Because I think we kind of missed the orange.
It's going.
Okay.
I'm actually disappointed it didn't make a launch because, man, I made the original orange. I'm the biggest fan of it all. Like, come on, guys, let's get this happening. So yeah, I'm chasing that up tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, good. Okay, because we need that. We need that orange website as soon as possible.
I need that too.
So you mentioned a couple of times that you've got audits going on right now, like in a part of the Houston upgrade, which we're expecting at some point in the next few months. Can you tell us a little bit about like some of the big things that we're expecting in Houston and why it's going to be so great?
Yeah. So originally we launched Rocket Pool with a major to-do, and that was the protocol governance through an on-chain mechanism. So that's what Houston will be delivering in a nutshell, is the ability to govern parameters of the protocol. Quite a decent amount of parameters on the protocol going forward, and it can be managed through the protocol DAO, the PDAO as we all affectionately know it. That's been a goal since day one. So delivering on that is a massive win for us. I think we're doing it in a way, we're doing DAOs differently. This DAO is a true on-chain DAO. It's not just how many tokens you hold dictates your voting power, voting weight, which is pretty much most 99% of DAOs currently are. If you hold a bunch of tokens, you can influence the DAO. I mean, it's easy to do, but it doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. So we want to make sure that if you're running a node on Rocket Pool, or if you're voting in the protocol and participating in, and that's been a goal since day one. So this will deliver on that, and it's doing it in a way. Kane is an absolute magician. Like, seriously, some of the stuff he came up with to do this in smart contracts just blows my mind. Like I'm a smart contract dev, but I'm not on Kane's level. Like, Kane's just leagues above. Like, the guy's insane. So he was showing us, the way he was going to do this up with basically 4 proofs and whatnot early on, and it blew my mind. Like the kind of elegant solution that came up with this. I still have the occasional, how about we do it this way? There will be like 2 thumbs up from Kane. The 99% of the stuff's like, I don't know, Dave. So he does it his way, which is the right way to do it because he's an absolute magician. So he's come up with an on-chain way of doing voting through this protocol DAO, which is just incredibly good, and it's an absolute one of its kind. Like, there's no other DAO that can match how this DAO is structured and how it will work when it's live. Like, it's. I mean, a lot of people are like, DAOs, it doesn't make number go up and all that kind of stuff, but it's absolutely critical to longevity and the kind of health of the protocol as a whole. Having a DAO where people that make the decisions are the ones running it, not just the people that hold the token. And then you open yourself up to things like Sybil attacks, where you don't know if one token holder is different from the other and stuff like that. Like, you need to have time and money invested, and that kind of prevents these kind of attacks from happening to a certain degree as well. But that's a whole other topic. So yeah, I think that's the main thing which this Houston upgrade will be delivering, is this true on-chain DAO going forward. It also brings a couple other really cool. If you're staking as a service provider, you don't want your DevOps guys handling ETH. You don't want to send them ETH to stake on the node. Like, that's not what you want. So now you basically stake ETH on behalf of the node. That way you can have your DevOps running the node, and the kind of funds can be separate from that. If you're a custodian and whatnot, and you don't need to worry about commingling the two, that's a big one. We also have the RPL withdrawal address, which is another big one, which I've pushed for a while. So the ability to supply RPL to a node in a trustless way, which allows people to lend RPL essentially to node operators as collateral, so that node operator doesn't need to bring it themselves and whatnot. There's a few other facets that go into that, but I think that one opens itself up for a lot of third-party integration opportunities which we've heard a few about already. So yeah, I think that one's quite exciting. And and I mean that's Houston. Post that is Saturn. I don't know if you want me to go into that. I can go into that one too if you want.
We'll cover that in a minute, but I want to ask you a little bit about Houston before we move on to Saturn. So one of the things that's happening, of course, is there's a Guardian wallet right now which controls some of the parameters of Rocket Pool protocol, and that will be moving on to on-chain voting, right? So this is a huge step towards more decentralization for Rocket Pool, which is amazing. And over the last year as well, we've had the powers of the ODAO powers of the ODAO have remained, I'll be honest, but like the influence of the ODAO and like the amount of money they've been getting has been coming down as well. So I guess my question is that, what's happened is the PDAO has been gaining a lot of power, and that more and more decisions of the protocols like future and development are now going through the PDAO. How does that make you feel as someone who kind of founded Rocket Pool, and like that was like your baby, and in a sense now you're kind of like relinquishing control and just giving it over to the PDAO? Like, have you thought much about that, and like how that makes you feel?
It's already kind of happened to a large degree. I mean, over the last years, over the last 2 years since we launched, we've involved the community as much as we can in these discussions, like RPIPs and stuff to improve the protocol. I mean, the things that I would have done certain ways, it didn't turn out that way, and that just happens. I mean, it's much bigger than me, Rockpool now. So the protocol DAO, like I wouldn't have pushed for the protocol DAO to get so involved and to be a true on-chain mechanism now if I wasn't comfortable kind of sitting back and seeing where they take us. I mean, the whole goal from day one was to make sure the protocol was run by the node operators. So that's what this delivers on. For better or for worse, I might not agree with everything, and I don't. I mean, that's just the way things are. But I'm okay with it. I'm actually really curious to see how it goes. Like, it is one of those things you can kind of envision, and you really hope it goes well, and I really hope it goes well. But we're delivering on the original vision, and I just really hope it goes as planned. I really do.
Yeah, I'm sure that if I was in your situation, I'd be like so anxious about it. I have to admit, like, I'd be like, oh no, this is my baby. Like, what are you guys doing?
I know. But again, like like there isn't that duality there. Like, you do feel that, like, you generally do feel like you're like, what are you talking about? You want to do what? But then you sit back, you think about it more, and you're like, okay, the first initial reaction is you're changing something I made. And then you're like, hang on, that's not what Rockpool's about anymore. And then you kind of draw you back. You're like, you think about it, like, that's actually a good idea. And then you look at it a bit more and you kind of break it down. So I've definitely kind of worked with myself to make myself a lot more initially accepting of ideas rather than that first kind of defensive behavior where you're like, you want to do what? I'm like, are you crazy? Now you actually think about it a bit more. And sometimes ideas are crazy in the end. And you're like, you end up saying no. But a lot of times you spend more time to think about it and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. But I think that's going to be really interesting to see how, Houston will impact those, that going forward. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how that works out. Let's move on to my favorite topic that I'm so excited about, which is Saturn. So with Saturn, it looks like there's going to be a major reworking of Rocket Pool, the protocol, the way it is now. What are your thoughts about Saturn? Actually, let's talk a little bit about what Saturn might include right now. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay, so probably start with we've actually had a lot of talks on this week. I think we'll be looking at Saturn 1 and 2 now. So because we generally look at trying to release not too big. When you have a protocol like Rockpool, which has a lot of complexities involved and has a lot of value locked in it, smaller releases are better. Even Houston was probably creeping up there in size, and I'm glad we kind of kept it where we did. But Saturn, we're probably looking at breaking up into 2 releases now. The first one will incorporate the tokenomics changes, which the PDR has voted on. We'll probably be looking at a few other things in that, mainly aimed at scaling, hopefully. And then Saturn 2 will include a few other kind of releases as well, because we already have a lot of stuff planned for this. I mean, we even had we were in planning months ago for kind of ODAR replacement. They can kind of get pushed back a little bit, maybe into 2 now, and we focus on scaling with the first one and the new tokenomics changes, because I think that's probably the most, like we have Lido with their thing coming up. We definitely want to be on the front foot as much as we can in regards to that, and that's what we're going to focus on with Saturn 1. Saturn 2, again, will feature a few of the other things which aren't so scaling related or tokenomics related. So just to keep the size of the release down, again, we don't want to be releasing too much at once. It makes a nightmare for the auditors to audit as well. I feel sorry for those guys, as it is most of the time, but and make it a more manageable release. So yeah, I think we'll be looking at Saturn 1 and Saturn 2,
So
probably in the new year. Yeah.
do you have any ideas of the timelines for the different updates that we're getting? Because in the post that you wrote recently, that definitely perked some ears and got people curious about how things are going to work in those kind of timelines. Have you guys talked about it internally since then?
Well, we're actually having a workshop on it early next week. As a team internal workshop, we do this from time to time where we want everyone's input and everyone's kind of ideas on board for what should be included in release. Once we kind of figure out a path with that, we'll then run it obviously past the community and go through the RPIP process. But just early stage talks are just internal with us, because we kind of triage stuff internally. We're like, is this going to make it into this release, or is it going to make it into that release? It makes sense to put it in this one. And then once we've triaged it, then we triage it through the community. Then we triage it. It goes through the PDAO for voting and so forth. So we're going to be doing that quite soon. We've just got to work out next week, I think, through this workshop, what we would like to see exactly in Saturn 1 potentially. And kind of figure that out first.
So Langas has been taking a really active role on some of these discussions already, which is really great to see, some of the tokenomics talk that's been happening. And how do you guys, do you get involved in any of those discussions? How do you fit into that kind of stuff now?
Yeah, so I do a lot of the high level discussions with Langas and the team internally. I don't post as much because, you don't need me and Langas in there shouting at you. He can type the same stuff that we're kind of both thinking, and that's generally the way we do it. We will go we'll talk to the team first, then we'll have chats with each other, and then we'll talk to the team again, then we'll talk to the community, then we'll talk to the team, and then we'll just kind of just post that way. But he handles a lot of that more day-to-day stuff now, because I'm usually chock full of doing basically talking to partners, stakeholders, and a whole bunch of other stuff which isn't forum related. It's a lot more high level than that now. So he tends to jump in and out of that stuff as well. But it would be good getting a few more of the guys involved in the forum stuff. I think that would be a good idea to do going forward. But again, I don't want to take them away from their kind of daily duties as well, because they're pretty busy coding, actually making rockable. So yeah.
So we've got this great protocol now, that's captured the imagination of so many Ethereans, and people think it represents the best values of Ethereum, and all of this talk, value alignment, all that kind of stuff, that's been kind of flaring up recently. But it's a huge testament to the work that you and the team have done in getting us to this point. What are some of the things that you're excited about going forward, in the next year or next couple of years? What kind of things are you really eager to see happening with Rocket Pool and with Ethereum as a whole?
Okay, I'll start with Rocket Pool. So I think next year is going to be a massive year for Rocket Pool. I'm not just trying to make number go up or anything like that. I think what Houston, Saturn 1 and 2 will deliver will be absolutely massive for next year, especially from a scaling point of view. It's one thing being a decentralized product, even Ethereum itself, scaling has been an issue from day one. Decentralized things are just naturally hard to scale. That's essentially the main kind of roadblock with that. So same for Rocket Pool, we need to create kind of incentives to manage node operators who want to stake Ether, which liquid stake is deposit, kind of making sure that works in a way that you can scale. It is hard. And so I think next year, with the changes that we have got coming up, that's going to alleviate a lot of our scaling issues. That's going to be a big year for Rocket Pool next year. We've already done, I'm extremely proud of the protocol, the way it's gone to date. Like it's gone absolutely like pretty much number 2 liquid staking token. And a small team driven by a passionate community, like that's Ethereum. Like that's a bunch of devs working together, a bunch of community guys. All we're not some big we haven't had. We've turned away like a lot of VCs because we don't want their influence. We want to keep things between the team and the community, like working together with you guys rather than have external stakeholders that influence on us. We've had absolute minimal. We've had offers and we've chosen to do things, keep the status quo because we enjoy the way things are working. So I'm exceptionally proud, and I'm really excited for next year because we're obviously going to continue that to a large degree, but I think scaling next year is going to really take Rockpool to the next level. Like it's yeah. Anyway, for Ethereum, looking pretty excited to see some blob sidecarts happening next year for scaling and all that kind of stuff. That's going to be, well, hopefully, that's going to be pretty amazing. I am genuinely excited to see the way L2s kind of evolve. I've always been a little bit skeptical of L2s, but I think it's natural. Like this upgrade should be pretty important. Obviously, Beacon State route making is going to be absolutely phenomenal. Just pretty selfish for Rockpool kind of reason for that one. That will potentially allow us to do a whole bunch of stuff which we've already half planned for. So those two are my kind of major ones that I'm looking forward to with you.
Do you think there's any path for you to ride off into the sunset?
I don't know. I mean, I could. I don't know. Let's see where the next bull market goes. Suddenly, 6 months time, Dave retires. I don't know. Let's see how we go with this bull market. And I mean, I need to make sure, obviously, the protocol DAO is in place and working properly first before I even consider stuff like that. I don't know. Honestly, I still enjoy what I do. I'm not as involved on the Discord anymore just because I said life gets in the way and a whole bunch of other things. But I'm still very, very much involved. I mean, you may not see it in the day-to-day in the Discord, but I'm extremely involved behind the scenes. So I'm still powering a lot of the stuff. So I mean, maybe one day, but who knows when? Let's see how the bull market goes.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, in a year, maybe with 2 years, it might be good times for all of us. That'll be really exciting. And I think we're just starting to get the beginning ideas of a bull market now, right? So there's a long way ahead, and you've been through 3 of them, so you know better than most, what to look out for and how to kind of experience that. Do you have any bull market advice for people who might be watching, since you're a veteran of the bull markets now?
This is not financial advice. I just need to say that to everyone involved because it's crypto. Anything can happen. I mean, don't expect it to last forever. I mean that's just the thing. Number does go up. Just get prepared for the ride down. If you're in it for the long term, don't get too emotionally invested in the short term. You'll see number go up, you'll see number go down. It won't hurt as much if you have a time frame, 6 to 10 years ahead, and you're confident in the kind of crypto you're pursuing. Again, for me personally, I don't stray away from maybe a select few tokens and Ethereum. I haven't bought Bitcoin in years, but I'm very much a Ethereum. Get a mini pool happening, guys, if you can, through a bull market. Watching that number go up every day through the attestations or consensus awards, that's satisfying. But
it depends if you're in the smoothing pool or not, right? So,
you should see some conversations I've had Joe in our team chat lately. This close to getting out the other day. I had a couple of big ones come in. I'm like, Joe, it's killing me.
Them.
Like,
we saw
tell
them
me how to keep it. So I was inches away from opting out of the swimming pool the other day because anyway, we'll see. I trust in Joe. Trust in Joe. He resold me on it. So
it might be a good time to play the lottery just for the thrill of it, I think.
It's tempting. It's really
We've had some nice blocks coming in though. There was a guy who got 100 ETH block last week, and then the next day he left the smoothing pool.
But that's what you see that hit the smoothing pool, and you're like, well, Okay, then I'm hanging around. Well, that's made
Yep.
anything better, but except for that guy. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
that
mean,
poor guy.
yeah.
But
Uh,
yeah, I think the bull market's a really exciting time, and um, what's really exciting as well for Rocket Pool is that you guys are actually doing work that is not like reactionary to the bull market. This is work that
yeah,
you guys have been planning for a long time, and that kind of shows, right? And like you can see a logical progression. There isn't any like kind of cash grabbiness or any kind of
yeah.
greed that's coming through. Do you think that kind of speaks to the philosophy of the team and like the community as a whole? Like, how do you think that all works?
Yeah, well, I think so. I mean, like I touched on before, we've had VCs come in try to buy up big positions.
Yeah.
That we've never gone for it. If this is our first year and we're just launching, and you need that kind of capital straight up, it would be very hard. I can understand how startups get involved with a lot of VCs, just because you need that capital to get off the ground to kind of foresee your vision. We were luckily enough just managed to get through the 2018
Hmm.
bear market after doing a raise. And we had one small investment from Consensus back then, which kind of helped us get through that bear market. But man, like I think, yeah. So I think that does say a lot about Rockpool and the community. It's just the way we are. I don't want to see us get like. Can you imagine the team getting bought out by some big VC firm or anything like that? Like, it's just no way. So, yeah, I think, yeah, I just, yeah, it's a hard one to say. I just generally hope things. I hope the status quo keeps going, for a long time yet, just because it really is working. The community's been great. The team's very hardworking. Even like you said, even through a bear market, when that's you get a lot of stuff done in a bear market, but it's not always easy because you always have that thought at the back of your head. What if it all crashes down to two digits or stuff like that? What are we going to do? How are we going to manage tax, wages, all that kind of stuff? So it's not as easy when a number goes up. Um, but yeah, I've just yeah. That's a hard one. You're probably your hardest question yet, right?
That's okay. Yeah, I think you did a great job, like kind of putting like the philosophy, your philosophy, and like the kind of position the team's taken throughout like the whole conversation. So you you there wasn't necessarily a need for you to like sum it up in a couple of lines at the end. But I think I think we covered everything that I thought we would talk about. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about before, like maybe that we didn't like cover already, before we wrap things up?
I'm not sure, mate. I think we've done a pretty comprehensive job, actually.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know. Nothing really. I mean, I wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year going forward, because it is that kind of season.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone stay safe during the holidays. Have a good break. Try not to watch the charts too much, although I know that's not going to be possible for pretty much most of us, especially in a bull market. But try at least, yeah. But yeah, I'm keen and good to go for 2024. Let's do it.
And we're going to see you in Denver.
Oh yeah. I'm getting 100% getting pretty much everyone there. I don't think Joe will be there, unfortunately, because he's got family stuff on.
Hmm.
But I mean, pretty much all of us will be there, including a new junior, which might be starting hopefully early in the new year as
In
well. So that's
January,
kind of
we heard.
keen to see. So I'll have some more info
Yeah.
about that out setting up soon. So yeah, they'll be doing testing duties, a lot of testing duties. So that'll free up a bit of us. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, Dave, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you. And good luck with the audits. I know that the results came back with some minor issues, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And I hope
So
that it carries on like that with the audits coming up in the new year as well. Thank you so much for your time and your wonderful stories of the early days of Rocket Pool. And
so many of them.
we'll see you in Denver.
Thank you, Ak. Look forward to catching up with you guys and plenty of the community in Denver as well. Very much looking forward to it.